I'll do that again. It's the Real and Raw Show. I'm Lynn Serrano.
I'm Brian.
We'll be right back after this. We'll be right after this. I saw somebody popping out the door there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, whoa.
This is Real and Raw. We got to have something Real and Raw going on, right?
It's the extras of the show we don't anticipate.
Yeah. Poor girl. Trying to get... Hi, back
You're
there.
in camera, dear.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh, poor
Okay.
girl. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
She's the unsung hero in the back that's very supportive and everything. So I appreciate her so much.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Brian, I know, we're our schedules and everything. We don't get to talk about topics that often. So this is one of the things like, the 11th hour picking a topic and you're going to follow my trend or follow whatever I'm talking about here. But, it's funny. I'm going to take that off of there for a second. It's funny how we, as we develop and we get into knowing what makes us more zen and changing what we do in order to get where we can, like a plane, it has to go through that turbulence, then to get to that altitude where
Right.
you're coasting, where you can handle things, And one of the things that, has helped me since, since 9/11, I used to watch the news all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it would dictate my attitude, my fears, and all that. That year, 2001, was hard for me because in April I had a house fire.
Mhm.
And then I chose to stay home instead of go and visit family in New York
Right.
to fix my house.
Mhm.
And shortly after it was fixed, I was in my house. Then we had the 9/11 thing. So, and so then I was just still, letting the news and everything still bother me. And so today's topic, I wanted to talk about how, I have shifted from watching the news and doing all that. But like if you scroll down your Facebook and stuff, for me, I may not keep up with the current events, but people will bring it up, or not even the news outlets. I do have them on my thing in case there is, something I really have to pick, it's there. But, trends and things come out and then you see some of your friends talking about it and stuff. So what I wanted to bring for a topic today is trends and news. How do you keep updated, or even if you do? So I know your current situation, but have you explained how you always kept up with the news or what's going around, and if it's ever changed for you, or what's your attitude about it?
Well, I was fundamentally, I was raised that there are two things that you never talk about because everybody's entitled to their own, is politics and religion. Okay. So that's just the foundational thing. I might have caught the screenshots back in the day, obviously living at home and, being in more, like a college environment where you're around people. But as getting older, I've really carved out the space where I'm going to choose what's in my brain. As Jeffrey Gitomer said, one of my mentors, what you put it, don't look at the world, look at your world.
I
Right. And
love
it's
that.
like the education you put inside of your brain, you either have a choice in the matter or you don't. And I find it funny. I've got various friends that are into politics heavily, and I just find it very funny, like especially when it comes around to an election where they'll post something political or whatever, and then they wonder why somebody doesn't want to be their friend anymore, or they give them a bunch of bad messages. And I'm like, well, it's one of those areas that you're never going to get uniformity. You're never get 100%. Yeah, that's the right answer. It's just not designed that way. And so I don't keep in touch. I know that my girl gets on my case about even catching the screenshot, the 30 minutes before it repeats. And I just haven't done that because I want to control what's in my brain.
So let me ask you this. Do you recall a time though that you did like find something that of interest, interest in the news or in your neighborhood that you kind of were following? And if so, did you like just watch the comments, or did you like actually do your own research, or how do you,
I wish I could remember an example. It might have been something about like Bernie Madoff or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, this kind of stuff happened. And when I did that, I would look more at how long it's been going on and how many families he affected. So like the emotional side of things,
Hmm.
comments can go either way. In my industry, there's trends that happen all the time. But the thing about trends is that they come and go, kind of like fashion, right? Whatever is
Right.
old is forever new. It's just a matter of when it's going to pop again. And so I take trends that might be in the world and I apply it to like the wedding industry or customer experience or whatever. And it's like a lot of stuff never goes out of place. It's just kind of set aside for whatever's the flavor of the day, you know? And but the problem with that is that it does not replace what's fundamental. Like in terms of what what you do, how you serve customers, if it's like business trends, right?
Hmm.
It's not like you displace what you already have there. It's just you take what you have and you build on top of it. But you don't make what you already have established wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, so in other words, you do keep an eye on trends when it comes to business wise, but you definitely don't do for like the current events of the
No,
world or
no.
things like that.
I just
So,
I don't find any relevance in it. Now that could
yeah,
make me a person that's not in touch with reality, but it's like I want to focus on what's in my brain. As
yeah,
Goodheimer says, it's like be control of your world, not the world at large. And
right.
I want to have full access because there's so much I want to learn in what I've determined that I want to learn in that there is no time for anything else, you know?
So let me ask you this. Let's say like, you're getting ready to do a wedding party and all of a sudden everybody's stuck in the events of, of a shooting, a kid shooting or this or that or this or that. How do you handle at least not being very ignorant of some of the things that are
Sure,
affecting your area,
sure,
but still keep the calmness or suggestions that you have
sure.
about keeping where it's not affecting you, but you're still at least, okay, I know something happened in the area and, and be aware of it and empathetic because I know you are, but
Yeah.
yet, I mean, because like even with Facebook, right, on some of your stuff, you get friends talking about things.
Hmm. Yeah. Number one is that if it's something major like that, it's probably not going to be the first time where we're going to talk about this like right before the wedding. It's going to
Right.
be something that we've talked about in advance from a standpoint of if I, and I'm not going to be tone deaf to it,
Right.
but I'm also going to call it out to be like, okay, understanding from everybody that's involved, making sure that they're heard, making sure that
Mhm.
they're understood, but also though moving on from it. It
Right.
happened. I want to acknowledge that it happened, but at the same time, move on from what we're creating. You know,
Right.
I don't want to dwell there, but it's like if it's kind of like here in Wisconsin. I mean, big sports teams, right, where people might have their wedding in and around a Packer game or a Badger game or whatever it might be, but it's like to not acknowledge that that might be a concern to somebody where they want the game on a TV, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're going to have to contend with it regardless if you want to acknowledge it. And I
See,
would
yeah.
rather flush that out in advance that here's a concern, but then based on the couple and the guests that they're going to have there, how is the behavior going to be for most guests? you
Yeah.
know but I want to acknowledge it and let them choose what they feel is the best, but it's something that we're going to have to contend with. But it seems like the earlier you acknowledge it, it's an opportunity to change the mindset or to acknowledge the mindset. And the
Right.
earlier you do it, it seems like it gives you more breathing room. But the closer you get to that date, the more it becomes something that is more of a burden or an obstacle to overcome versus like at a distance. It's an opportunity to do something special or something fun, but you're also not leaving it the chance that people aren't going to remember that there's a game that night, for instance.
Yeah, and so I'm sure some of your parties have had a TV in the corner and everybody,
Right.
gathers around and you could always say, "I remember, that game was your wedding night. That was cool to watch that
Mhm.
and hang out with you." So I'm just saying. So
But I
again,
mean, but I mean to ignore it or to just, to be tone deaf to it instead of looking
yeah,
for a creative opportunity where how we can weave that in
right.
is the main thing there because you can either ignore it and it's only going to get worse or you can acknowledge it but then look for creative ways and then collaborate with the customer and their families about how to create a moment out of that.
Right, so that people aren't leaving. Oh shoot, it's 5 o'clock. It was nice. Congratulations. Nobody's at the dance floor at 10 o'clock at night after the game's over or
Correct.
whatever.
And
You know.
and it's like to, okay, like let's say that the game is on and people are watching it. Now what? Does that mean that the dance party stops? Does that mean that everybody stops celebrating you getting married? No. It's one more thing that we need to consider, but it doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that it has to lower the energy or the tempo or what the vibe is in the room, you know? And it's like, but to acknowledge this to a customer, to make them aware that it, and then let them decide what the best way to do this is great. Like whether I on a microphone give everybody updates
Yeah.
that, yeah, this is your wedding, but your people are going to do what they're going to do, and you don't want to undermine that. But also that you
Well,
want to acknowledge that it's like, hey, they want to watch the game. Well, we're not
yeah.
going to have a TV. Cool. Well, would it be okay that because everybody's going to look on their phone, you can either lean into what their behavior is, that
Right.
they're going to want to look on their phone, or you say, hey, every quarter I'm going to give an update.
Yeah.
We are here for so and so, but I also know that there's a really big game going on that everybody wants to watch.
Yeah. I used to do bachelorette parties, and we'd do some that were Survivor. Like they'd say, "Hey, Lynn, I want one on a Thursday because we can't do Friday. We got rehearsal, and we got the wedding on Saturday." And I'm like, I'm sorry, I gotta stay home watch Survivor. So we do Survivor parties and stuff,
Mhm.
and play or do things during commercials or whatever, and had a theme, making themes and things like that. So, but again, it is really cool to say that the trends in the news, we do have some control about when we hear things and when we don't. Like you don't want to read about tragedy at night right before you go to bed.
No.
That's nightmares,
And I
you
mean,
know?
also though another thing too is that like when I look at like business trends or whatever, we also have to look geographically. Like the bigger cities, New York
Yeah.
City, L.A., Chicago, and then it trickles out from there. Is those cities are always going to be on the top of things faster than anybody else.
Oh yeah.
But then by the time they're on a new trend, then we're getting the previous trend. Or if
Yep.
it's fashion, well then it starts in France or it starts in England, then it comes over here,
Yep.
right? But then also though, it's like I don't know. I just see this in experiencing when people, when new trends and reports come out, is that they almost like displace what they already know instead of
Yeah.
using that information to adapt or enhance what they know. Or like, okay, like let's say trends are going to come out every year, right? It's like, okay, what were the biggest trends of last year, and are any of them continuing, or are we starting fresh where we're going to more decor than we are flowers or experiential things?
Yeah.
it
Well,
I don't know, it's just a very interesting thing psychologically, that it's like, okay, we need to take what we know and kind of set it aside to bring in something new, which I don't think that that's the case when it comes to trends.
yeah. Well, and it's funny you say all that because I used to take my kids to New York in the summer. They'd hear the music there and it wouldn't even be here. And then they'd hear it 3, 6 months later. Oh, I heard that in New York.
Mhm.
But as far as, what's kind of irritant anyways is, you hear all these breaking news or breaking trends or whatever. And then, they get you in that FOMO. But let's be honest, trends and news, they play the shit out of
Oh
that.
yeah, right.
So so don't even worry about that. Know that okay, when I have time or when it affects me or whatever, I will, get to see it when I'm in that right mind, not but I think it's funny how they just have to feel like, and it's just like the holidays on Facebook or anything, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. You either do it early, you do it late, you do it whatever, but everybody's doing it,
Hmm.
So everybody gets in the trend of doing whatever the trend is.
Well, and it's trends are not, trends are, something kind of, I don't know, like a urgency thing where it's like, ooh, like news, right?
Yeah, right,
But it's like, okay, how long is it going to last? What do you want me to do with this? And why should I care?
right,
Because
right.
what is the root, like, and this goes back to media outlets. Where is this information being written from?
Yeah,
What perspective, what news source, what is their angle in terms of political views?
yeah. And
And is
and
it
people
being is it being funded by an independent source or by somebody that's writing for an industry publication that may or may not be legitimate?
people get everything from the API, and it is true, and we've seen it over and over that actually everybody's reading the same damn piece of paper. It's just your scenery is a little different.
Right. I
you
mean,
know?
like those, like let's say for instance, like the newest wedding colors. Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But it's some, in my opinion, I like to reframe it to be like instead of trends, it's something to consider. Here's what
Yeah.
to consider.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be your reality. Here are
Right.
just the latest findings that we found in the wedding industry or
Right.
whatever your industry is.
Yeah.
But it
And
doesn't mean you need to uproot what is already there.
and I think this brings a great point for people to realize that there is a lot of marketing manipulation
Oh yeah.
in the way people present things.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I love about the Real and Raw. We're just always trying to make you think about things, not so much changing, but make you think of thoughts that you didn't think before, And like I talk to my dad every now and then, and he's like, "Oh, this freaking news, this freaking this and freaking that, and oh, and there's this shooting, and there's this." I'm like, "Dad, I don't listen to. You need to know because you need to find out this and that." I'm like, "Dad, you're stressing me out. Don't want to even talk to you about it." You know, it's like, look, you're getting upset for no freaking reason. So stop it.
Well,
And
and when you look at trends too, how much of that is about to get you to feel a certain way or buy something, or how much of it is about propaganda versus just a viewpoint with nothing to
yeah,
sell? That to me is more authentic than here's how I
ab-
want you to feel like if it's a trend about fashion or something. Now,
absolutely,
some things are going to evolve more than others, like fashion, like wedding fashion or what have you. But it's all if it's for you to buy something, that is very slopey. That's like a very rocky road for me because you're doing it with the intent to get somebody to part way with their dollars versus here's an idea for you to consider, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
And I'm glad you said that because that's a pet peeve of mine. When I see people selling with the for people to have FOMO or for the, fear of missing out people, that's what
Yeah.
that FOMO means.
Yep.
But also the thing of, some people are trying to make a difference in this world, but then all they're doing is trying to hurry up and sell t-shirts.
Yep. Yep.
Why don't you go do what you need to and then sell t-shirts?
Correct.
So to me, it taints. Or I don't like companies that say, "Well, today we're giving 20% to the, you know, Wish Foundation." Bullshit. I will give to the Wish Foundation myself. I'm not doing it through you.
Right.
And I'm just using that as an example, but let's just be for real. I mean, and even GoFundMe things. Like I have a friend, she has a restaurant here. We all love her, and love you, Mary. I hope you're getting better every day. But she had a massive heart attack, and
Wow. Okay.
she's been on a meds, and it was a week ago today. And I'm glad to say their GoFundMe is great. I mean, she's got about $15,000 donated, but
Yeah.
now she'll have the Venmo on there, and that's on my page if anybody wants to give or see or know anything about it. But what I'm saying is I don't give through GoFundMe. I give direct. I
Right.
go the Venmo, PayPal, whatever. I want to know that person's getting it.
Right.
And I mean, so I mean, it's one of those things where they also take a percentage, or you pay a fee there, and I think it takes away from
Yeah.
the cause itself. So what I'm saying is GoFundMe is doing a good thing by announcing and spreading and whatever, but they're also doing it because they get money.
Correct. Right.
So, so the best thing is to read the news, go on, la la la, and go pay or go to the local bank that they have that's going right into their account or whatever.
There's a big distinction between a trend for something and a trend to make you aware of something.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's your conclusion and your perception about what it is, but when it's all about knowledge and wisdom, and it's like, hey, here are the 10 trends for the wedding industry for 2023, great. But if it's all propaganda or here, buy the full report or do this, it's like, the
Yeah.
authenticity goes away real quick.
Exactly. And it really just turns you off from that person. I
Correct.
couldn't agree. I couldn't even agree more with that.
Yeah.
So I know you need to get going, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
I. But what do you want to wrap up, or what did you get out of this today?
I'm going to leave it up to you because you're the one that picked the topic, you
Okay,
know?
so you have any final words on the
No, how
topic?
about you? What are your final words?
My final words is great that if anything, just realize that you don't need to be suckered into that vast into a vacuum for anything you see out there. just know that there's too many distractions. Try not to be distracted on a lot of things. And I like our podcast being short because everybody just gets a little bit of it and they get to go. And but again, I know for Brian and I, we appreciate you guys always listening and chiming in. And we also know that it's just, we're both from the school of thought that, realize you're blessed with a mind and your thought and your life that you want. And you don't have to be suckered into anybody else's world if you don't want to, especially if they're only bringing negative and not any food for thought for you.
Correct. Yeah. Well, all said.
All right. Well, as always, Brian, I love that you just go with the punches with me. You're the best.
Yeah, so likewise.
And I love that I could see your eyes good today with that background. All right, you guys have a great day. I love you, Brian.
Yeah, I love you too, Lynn. See you next week, everyone.
See ya.